The movie opens in a cold and dimly lit room, where several young girls are forced to participate in a series of disturbing rituals. While a mysterious Russian woman records every single detail, some of these children begin to show horrific signs of demonic possession. Their bodies twist in unnatural angles, and the atmosphere quickly becomes filled with pure dread. Far away from this terrifying scene, we meet a young girl named Piper. Because she has been nearly blind since birth, she struggles to connect with the other kids in her neighborhood. Whenever she tries to socialize, they quickly turn their backs and walk away. Fortunately, her protective stepbrother Andy arrives just in time, and he immediately takes her away. When the siblings finally arrive at their house, they notice that something is terribly wrong. Their father has been in the shower for an unusually long time, and he refuses to answer any of their calls. Terrified that something awful has happened, Andy grabs a knife to pry open the locked door. Inside, they discover their father lying dead on the cold floor, surrounded by vomit. Although they soon realize he suffered a tragic drug overdose, Piper is completely devastated by the sudden loss. Sometime later, we see the grieving siblings sitting in an office with a social worker named Wendy. Wendy explains that she's found a kind foster mother for Piper, but Andy absolutely refuses to be separated from his sister. Since he will turn 18 in just 3 months, he promises to take full legal custody of Piper as soon as possible. Even though Wendy expresses serious concern about Andy's troubled past, she eventually agrees to arrange a meeting with the foster mother. The very next day, the siblings pack up all of their belongings and they drive to a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. When they step out of the car, they are warmly greeted by Laura, who appears to be a very jolly and loving woman. Although she instantly hugs Piper, she barely acknowledges Andy's presence. As they walk inside, Andy notices a special textured carpet on the floor, which is designed to help visually impaired individuals navigate. When he asks if she bought it specifically for Piper, Laura explains that it actually belonged to her late daughter, Kathy. According to Laura, her young daughter tragically drowned in the backyard pool some time ago. Just as the conversation becomes incredibly tense, Laura receives an urgent phone call from Wendy. While Laura is occupied with her call, the siblings decide to explore the large backyard. Near the edge of an empty swimming pool, they spot a strange young boy who is squeezing the family cat with terrifying strength. Before any harm can be done, Laura rushes outside and quickly pulls the frightened animal from his arms. When the boy slowly turns around, Andy notices a very strange mark carved right beneath his eye. Later that evening, Laura officially introduces the mysterious boy as Oliver, explaining that she took him in after his parents died. She claims that the trauma made him selectively mute, but she hopes that he will eventually speak again. When night falls, Piper is given Kathy's old bedroom, while Andy is forced to sleep in a cramped space. Despite the terrible accommodations, Andy accepts the room and immediately texts his friend about the weird boy. Suddenly, Laura walks into the room, and she attempts to start a conversation with the teenager. Because Andy is completely uninterested, he turns to speak to his sister through the thin wall. When he looks back, he is deeply shocked to see Laura scrolling through his private messages. Although he tries to control his anger, he quickly apologizes for losing his temper. Before she leaves, Laura asks a highly unsettling question that leaves him speechless. After the kids fall asleep, Laura creeps down the hallway, and she stands silently in the doorway of Piper's room. She stares intensely at the sleeping girl for several minutes, and then she goes to the living room to check the weather forecast. Sitting alone in the dark, she turns on the television and begins watching the same disturbing ritual videos from the opening scene. When Andy wakes up the following morning, he is disgusted to find that his pants are wet. After quickly washing his soiled clothes, he heads to the bathroom to take a shower. As the water pours down, he suddenly suffers from intense flashbacks of the day his father died. Later that afternoon, Laura drives the siblings to their father's funeral, where a small crowd of mourners is gathered. After the emotional service concludes, Laura stays behind in the room with the casket. While no one is watching, she shockingly cuts a lock of hair from the dead man's head. Once they walk outside, she tries to convince Andy to give his father a final kiss. When Andy hesitates, Laura presses him further, but he refuses to kiss his abusive father on the lips. To his complete horror, Laura leans down and passionately kisses the corpse herself. Back at the house, the mute boy, Oliver, begins aggressively banging on the glass patio door. He strikes the glass until it shatters into pieces, and then he wanders out to the locked backyard shed with a bloodied hand. Although he tries to open the heavy padlock, he ultimately fails to get inside. On the drive home from the cemetery, the atmosphere in the car is incredibly awkward and quiet. To break the silence, Laura suggests that they do something fun to cheer themselves up. When Andy mentions that he wants to get drunk, Laura absolutely loves the idea. As soon as they arrive home, they begin playing wild drinking games, and even Piper joins in on the chaotic fun. Once Piper falls asleep on the couch, Laura and Andy share a deep and emotional conversation. Laura explains how much she misses her late daughter, as she claims she would give anything to hear Kathy call her mother one last time. In response, Andy opens up about his own childhood, revealing that his father regularly beat him in the bathroom. He explains that his father never laid a hand on Piper because she was always the favorite child. As soon as Andy passes out, Laura's friendly demeanor completely disappears. She creeps into his room, and she secretly slips a strange substance into his protein shake bottle. To make matters even worse, she goes to the bathroom to urinate in a glass jug. She then pours the warm liquid onto Andy's pants, framing him to look like he wet himself yet again. Before she leaves, she grabs his phone and carefully deletes all the pictures he took of Oliver. The next morning, Andy wakes up with a terrible taste in his mouth, and he is horrified to find his pants are wet. When he goes to the laundry room to wash his clothes, he runs directly into Laura and Piper. Laura points out his wet pants to his sister, which leaves Andy feeling incredibly embarrassed. After Andy leaves the room, Laura whispers a toxic lie into Piper's ear. She claims that Andy was acting extremely aggressively the previous night, and she expresses concern for his mental well-being. Later that afternoon, Andy desperately wants to wash off the grime, but his flashbacks prevent him from entering the indoor bathroom. He decides to take a bucket of water to the backyard to bathe under the warm sun. While he's washing himself outside, he glances up at Oliver's window and witnesses something truly bizarre. The young boy is staring blankly at an insect, and then he casually pops the bug into his mouth. Intrigued and deeply concerned, Andy decides to go inside the house to check on the quiet boy. When he discovers that Oliver's bedroom door is locked from the outside, Andy grabs a sharp kitchen knife to pry it open. In an effort to win the boy's trust, Andy slices up a piece of fresh fruit and offers it to him. Instead of eating the food, Oliver grabs the sharp knife and begins chewing on the metal blade. Blood pours from his mouth. Terrified, Andy grabs the boy and tries to pull him out of the house to get medical help. However, as they reach the edge of the property, Oliver stops dead in his tracks. He refuses to cross a strange white circle painted on the grass, but Andy forcefully pulls him across the line anyway. The moment Oliver crosses the boundary, he falls to the ground and begins violently convulsing. As Andy rips open the boy's shirt, he discovers a terrifying cult symbol on his skin. For the first time since they met, the boy finally speaks, screaming out, "Help me," in a desperate voice. Suddenly, Laura and Piper return home and spot the chaotic scene in the yard. Screaming at Andy for letting the boy escape, Laura quickly drags Oliver back inside. She locks herself in her bedroom with the thrashing boy, and she immediately starts watching tutorials on demonic rituals on her computer. She manages to calm him down by gently stroking his forehead, and she then forces him to swallow the lock of hair she stole from the father. Later that night, Andy decides to face his fears and take a proper shower in the bathroom. While he is washing his hair, he suddenly sees a terrifying figure standing right outside the glass door. Believing it is the ghost of his abusive father, Andy panics and begins screaming in absolute terror. The figure cryptically whispers that she will die in the rain, which causes Andy to slip on the wet floor and knock himself unconscious. When Andy finally wakes up, he finds himself strapped to a hospital bed with doctors hovering over him. Meanwhile, back at the foster home, a dark storm rolls in and heavy rain begins to fall. Feeling lonely and scared, Piper walks into Laura's bedroom to find some comfort. The two of them sit together on the bed, and they begin watching old home videos of Kathy. Shortly after, Laura visits Andy at the hospital to check on his condition. Andy is deeply shaken, and he begs Laura to keep Piper safe inside the house. When Laura asks him why he is so worried, Andy explains that his father's ghost warned him about a death in the rain. Although Laura pretends to take his warning seriously, she has a very different plan in mind. As soon as she returns home, she immediately takes Piper outside to play in the pouring rain. They splash around in the puddles, and Laura smiles creepily as she watches the blind girl laugh. She then leads Piper into the dark backyard shed, where she dresses her in Kathy's clothes. While Piper is shivering from the cold, Laura guides her hand toward a chest freezer and forces her to touch the frozen corpse of her daughter. The next afternoon, Andy is finally discharged from a hospital, and he returns to the foster home feeling highly suspicious. Upstairs in her bedroom, Laura is watching a terrifying VHS tape that details the 3 steps of resurrection. According to the tape, the ritual requires a host to consume the dead body mimic the original death, and purge the soul. Realizing she has all the necessary ingredients, Laura prepares to bring Kathy back to life. Later that night, Laura secretly sprays Andy's cologne all over her clothes. She creeps into Piper's room, and she violently strikes the sleeping girl across the face. The next morning, Laura loudly accuses Andy of abusing his sister, claiming that his mental state has completely deteriorated. Because the room smelled exactly like Andy's cologne, Piper sadly believes the lie and turns against her brother. Through the window, Andy notices Oliver standing motionless in the pouring rain, and he quickly grabs his phone to record the bizarre behavior. Seeing this, Laura lunges forward and smashes his phone on the floor. Infuriated by her actions, Andy pins her against the wall and threatens to hurt her. He begs Piper to leave the house with him, but the brainwashed girl refuses and chooses to stay with Laura. Realizing he cannot save her right now, Andy leaves the house alone and heads straight to the social services office. While looking around the lobby, he is shocked to see a missing child poster featuring a boy who looks exactly like Oliver. Meanwhile, Laura drives Piper to a game center, leaving her there so she can prepare the house for the ritual. At the office, Andy confronts Wendy and accuses Laura of kidnapping the young boy. Although Wendy is highly skeptical, Andy demands that she look at the poster of a missing boy, whose real name is Connor Bird. Wendy reluctantly admits that the agency never did a background check on Laura because she had been a trusted employee for over 20 years. Back at the house, Oliver's demonic hunger becomes completely uncontrollable. He trashes the kitchen, and he begins tearing chunks of flesh off his own arms. When Laura tries to intervene, the possessed boy attacks her and bites a large piece of flesh from her hand. Bleeding heavily, Laura locks herself in a room and uses her own blood to draw a circle on a mirror. The demon inside Oliver is instantly drawn to the symbol, and he slowly calms down. Laura then guides the ravenous boy to the backyard shed, where she allows him to begin feasting on Kathy's frozen corpse. At the same time, Wendy and Andy are driving back to the house to investigate. Sensing that danger is near, Andy leaves a voicemail on Piper's phone, apologizing for hiding their father's abusive nature. Unfortunately, Laura has already confiscated Piper's phone, and she realizes that her dark secrets are about to be exposed. She quickly cleans up the blood in the house, and she changes into clean clothes to hide her wounds. When Wendy and Andy arrive at the house, Laura greets them with a warm smile. She shows Wendy around the clean home, pretending that everything is perfectly normal. However, Andy refuses to play along, and he sneaks out to the backyard shed. He breaks the heavy lock, and he is horrified to see Oliver devouring the decayed remains of the dead girl. Inside the main house, when he notices fresh blood dripping from Laura's bandaged hand. Before she can ask any questions, Andy screams for her from the backyard. Realizing her plan is ruined, Laura begs Wendy to help her bring Kathy back. When Wendy refuses and runs toward the yard, Laura chases her with a look of pure madness. As Andy and Wendy attempt to flee, Laura climbs into her car and accelerates toward them. She strikes him hard with the vehicle. Wendy dies instantly, and Andy is left severely injured. While he gasps for air in a puddle, Laura holds his head underwater until he drowns. With both witnesses dead, she retrieves Piper to complete the ritual. When they return home, Laura leaves Piper inside while she drags Wendy's body away. Suddenly, Piper hears Andy's voice calling out from the darkness. She reaches out to touch his face. To her horror, she feels his mangled flesh and realizes it is the demon. Terrified, she runs to the bathroom and locks herself inside, only to stumble over Andy's actual dead body on the floor. Laura breaks down the door, and she explains that she's going to drown Piper in the swimming pool. She claims that this is the only way to transfer Kathy's soul into her body. Dragging the screaming girl outside, Laura throws her into the pool. As she holds Piper underwater, the terrified girl desperately screams the word "Mom" with all her remaining strength. Hearing that word triggers a wave of grief in Laura, causing her to loosen her grip. Seizing the opportunity, Piper fights her way out of the pool and runs toward the dark road. Oliver attempts to block her path, but she bravely kicks him and continues running until a motorist rescues her. Meanwhile, Oliver catches a glimpse of his own missing poster, which triggers a spark of humanity inside him. He deliberately steps over the white boundary line, and he collapses as the demon leaves his body. Bring Her Back 2025 movie recap ends with the police arriving at the scene and finding the injured boy crying out for help. They search the backyard, and finally, they discover a broken Laura floating in the empty pool, cradling her daughter's frozen corpse in her arms.